loved to sleep in, and they ate a lot. Sounds like a teenager, right? When I was a teenager, my best friends were the fireflies. Trust me when I say I was not going to play with Orin or be too friendly with him, because he always took it the wrong way. Honestly, he was the worst wizard ever and barely made it through university. His poor parents. Thoughts of him forced me to look across the crowd, where he was standing between his father, Orin Reguila, and his mother, Tonya Kappes. Luckily, his only saving grace to his clumsy spiritual gift, he didn't look a thing like his father, who had a large nose, wore a top hat, and had a British accent. He certainly fit the bill of a tea leaf reader and used his shop, the Gathering Grove Tea Shop, to hide his spiritual gift. Yep, all the shops in my hometown of Whispering Falls were covers for the owner's spiritual gifts. And out of all the shops in Whispering Falls, Orin's mom's shop, Glory Bee Pet Shop, was my absolute favorite. I looked over at his mom and noticed the beak of a bird sticking out of the top knot of messy hair on her head. She was in Orin's ear about something, which made me look at him, then recall how much I had to get away from him. Moving away couldn't come soon enough. It was the fireflies who saved me from hours upon hours of having to deal with him. It wasn't like everyone here was young and vibrant. In fact, we were the only children here, and now we were grown. But boy, oh boy, did I hide from him. Deep in the woods, too, not so far from the Gathering Rock. In fact, I slid my gaze to the edge of the tree line behind Orin and his parents, where I could see my great-aunt Eloise's shadow behind the large oak. Though she thought she was being sneaky, the light of the moon shone just right, a moonbeam beelining right to her and illuminating her bright red hair. Our eyes caught. She gave me an ever-so-slight nod as she tugged on the edge of her cloak, which then swooped around her body, the hem settling just on the top of her shoulder. She smiled. I smiled. We both knew this was a big night for me. She never came to the council meetings. Long history, but one tradition she lived by. And her house was located deep in the woods, so when Orin tried to find me, the fireflies would buzz to tell me, and we'd hide from him. Except the one time when I didn't want to be bothered with the fireflies after I'd snuck out of my house. I'd wanted to be alone. My mom and I had had a big fight, and I'd snuck out. Needless to say, the fireflies led him right to me, along with his parents, who took me straight back home to our cottage on the hill, just past the Gathering Rock, where my parents ended up grounding me for sneaking out. I'd been hiding out near my great-aunt Eloise's house, where it was easy for me to think and just be. I wanted to be immortal, just like my Granny Darla, whom I never knew. Chapter 2. Order! 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 Chandra's voice faded with each word as her shoulders slumped. We have got to make this decision about the future of our young ones. Isadora Solstice, the one I considered the wisest spiritualist in Whispering Falls, finally spoke up. Yes, whether or not they have our gift. In Lo's case, she doesn't. But what about the other children? Her gaze moved to Orin. Orin is a young man who would love to go to... Her voice trailed off. A rock concert, he yelled, and threw his hands up, making the rock and roll gesture as he stuck out his tongue. Yeah, I'd be stoked to get out of here. Lucky. He threw the last word to me. Rude. He was just so rude. I glared at him. A concert. Izzy put her hands together and lowered them in front of her. She'd been the president for many years when I was a child, but as with everything, that had changed. I know we need to solve Lo's situation tonight, but we also need to think about our future. Times have changed. Izzy had always been a voice of reason, and when Mom wouldn't let go of the reins she had on me, I'd run to Izzy to get advice. I have never had children of my own, but I do believe mothers are very important. Therefore, I believe June should have the final say, as she is in fact the mother. She pushed back her long blonde hair and wiped her hands down her red A-line skirt that plunged all the way to the ground, showing the tips of her black high-heeled lace-up boots.